Hey, what's up? Alex here from Metamind Music. In today's video, I want to talk to you about the 3 things that I wish I knew starting out as a producer like 10 years ago when I just started recording my guitar. 3 truths that I really wish I knew back then. Before we dive in, I want to give you my free PDF. It's a simple 7-step framework to help you get your ideas from beginning to end. It walks you through a whole process so that you don't get stuck. And it gives you a bunch of tips that I learned along the way to help you get a song finished and be happy with the final production. So go ahead and download that at metamindmusic.com/workflow, or you can find it in the description below. So let's dive in. There's a lot of fundamental truths that I want to share with you today. I'm pretty excited. First of all, the biggest truth that I would want to share with you is that the first thing you should learn when you get into music production is to learn your tools properly. So that means your EQ, your compression, your ADSR envelope filters for sound design, your routing, parallel processing, all these different techniques, just to, even if you don't master them, to understand what each knob and each parameter actually does to your sound, and like have that connection in your mind from experience, not just reading about it and be like, oh, I think this is what compressor does, or I think I use compressor here, and using it very analytical. You want to be able to pick up with your ear what every setting is doing. So if you're boosting a certain frequency range in the equalizer by chance, for example, you want to know what that's going to sound like. You want to have an idea of what that EQ move is going to sound like if you're adding or if you're removing. Same with compression. If you're tweaking the attack and release settings, instead of just tweaking them randomly and hoping that it produces something good because you think that compressor is what the compressor move is what you should be doing. And I'm speaking from experience. This is what I used to do. I just used to pop on a compressor, be like, I'm supposed to compress this, right? And then just twiddle with the settings, not really know what they meant until I thought that it would sound good. But if you have an understanding of what attack and release and the threshold and what all those things actually mean, and then knowing what you're aiming for in using these tools, they will serve you so much better. So that was my first kind of piece of knowledge, is just like, that will enhance your productivity so much if you just know the basics of the fundamental tools of your routing techniques, your EQ, your compression, reverb, and just different mixing techniques, processing, production techniques in your DAW. If you just know the basics, it will take you a long way. And to add on to that, the knowledge of these tools from a mental place is not necessarily the same thing as using it in your songs practically. Because what I have learned in my experience is that using something in your song, like actually practicing what you learned, is such a different phenomenon than just learning the concept in theory, right? Because if you learn a concept, that's great, but you don't really understand it until you apply it to a project you're working on, or apply it to a sound, or mess around with it just to experiment and see what it does. So I would encourage you that knowledge that does not necessarily equal experience, and it's the experience you have with these tools in your own relationship with them and using it with your productions and your music that will enhance your production skills. And in learning just a few tools very well, like a few EQs that you really like and a few compressors you really like, and maybe one synthesizer, and if you just learn that really well, that's all you need. You'll be far ahead of most people, because just an in-depth understanding of your tools, even if it's just a basic small amount of tools, will transmit to other tools. Once you experiment with new tools and new synths or new plugins, you'll know already what all the settings do, and you'll already know how to use it because you've been using something else that was similar. So that was my number one tip, is just learning your tools, learning the tools properly so that you can use them to the maximum effectiveness that they can be used. The second tip that I have for you is capturing great source sounds and performance. And these are kind of two sides of the same coin. One is for just sound quality, and like basically the quality of the audio signal that you're bringing into your DAW is most importantly when you capture it. That is the most important part of getting a good sound at the end of your recording, is to get it good at right at the source, right? And there's kind of a hierarchy of what matters in terms of capturing a great sound or capturing a great performance. And number one, it's just almost the opposite of what we think. We always think that we need these plugins and we need these crazy tools and we need, who knows, we need all these other like preamps and all this external hardware gear to get a good sound. But the truth is actually completely the opposite, that you're the number one influence of your sound and of getting a good performance and a good quality recording is the player. And that's 100% true. You'll never get over that. It's like if someone can't play their instrument well or hasn't practiced their part, or if you're not playing something properly or without confidence and you're not feeling it, it's not really going to translate. You can't really polish a turd, so to speak. And this goes up the line. Like you can't really, if for example, you're using super high quality mics, super high quality preamps, and you have all these expensive plugins, but you didn't set up your guitar to be in tune and you didn't change the strings, well, your recording is still going to sound like garbage, unfortunately. So it's basically, you have to think from the player then to the instrument, whatever it may be, whether it's bass guitar, guitar, or a piano, or even like some sort of horn instrument, whatever instrument it is, you want to make sure that the instrument itself sounds good. You want to make sure that the room you're in actually sounds good. The mic you're using sounds good. That is the number one thing you want to focus on, and not worry about the gear, not worrying about the plugins, not worrying about the processing. Because if you do that right away, if you capture great source sounds and performance, the mixing will almost take care of itself, because the sound will already almost be there. It'll be 85% of the way there, 90% of the way there. And then the mixing stage is just bringing it to have maximum impact. And this tip also kind of translates into performance, which I'm a big proponent of. If you're producing, whether it be rock music, metal music, folk music, or even electronic music, I think that there should be some component of that music that you should be playing, that you should be actually performing into creation. And if that's the case, that when you're performing, you want to try and engage as if you're a producer. You want to make sure that you are committed, that you're actually really into the zone, you're into what you're doing, and not just doing it from an analytical point of view, or you're trying to record a part. You want to feel it, right? You want to have some expression. And if you're recording somebody else, this is what typically a producer would do, is like try to get the expression out of the artist, to try and find where their creative center is. Like, what are they trying to say? Where is their unique talent? Where is that going to come out in their performance? And it's right at the source that you're going to get those magical moments. And I have done this so many times in the past, where I was just jamming with my guitar, jamming over what I've been recording, or even just noodling without recording anything, and have these amazing parts, these amazing pieces of music, or riffs, or motifs, or even just sections that just came out of me because I was super in the zone and just feeling it, and I didn't capture it. And I haven't captured so many things like that. And that's something that I would, if I could encourage you, is like, if you're recording or jamming an instrument, or just like vibing out on a sound, record it, right? Record that essence, because it's like those kind of, even if it's not perfect, those little like off time, or like the small little human elements that you add to those vibey performances will make the difference at the end of your production. Like, it will be the thing, it will be the component of your song that really brings it above the rest. And I really want to encourage you to like capture good quality sounds and performances, right? That's what you should be focused on first and foremost, over what gear or what technique you're using to record. You want to get the good performance, good songwriting, right? Good quality sound right at its source. So that's my second point. And the third point is basically having a discipline, having some sort of structure to your creative workflow. And I speak from experience again. Like, I went to school for audio engineering, right? I learned the ins and outs of signal processing and conversion from analog to digital, and I learned tape, and I learned mixing, and I learned all the routing techniques, and I learned the frequency, and I trained my ear for all these frequencies. And after I went to school, I was still perplexed by the fact that I couldn't finish music regularly. I was still struggling to finish recording my own music. And I was like, what is the problem with this? Like I thought I did everything I needed to do to be able to go forward. I know all the knowledge of the tools I need to use to get this recorded, but I'm still struggling. And what I realized is that I didn't have any form of structure or any form of framework or process to my creativity. I was still just a guitarist, like having riffs and trying to smack riffs together and hope that that would happen to make a great song, right? But the truth is, creating a song or producing a song from start to finish has a process, and it's like that process will keep you focused and it will keep you creative into finishing something, right? Instead of just having a little bit of an idea, not sure where to go, and then you give up. Or you have a few ideas and then you expand on it and then you don't know where to go and then you just kind of give up because you don't know what to do next, right? You get stuck. And it's like having that workflow, having that discipline, a structure, even though it kind of feels counterintuitive in a creative pursuit, is very important, right? And that's in the guide, so get it. But it's basically um, this workflow is like is approaching producing a song, like recording a song and coming up with the ideas, songwriting. Where is your inspiration? Like, what are you trying to communicate with your song? And then the mixing, and it's separating every process of this big gigantic thing that we want to accomplish into phases, right? So that when you're creating and you're trying to write your song, you're not worried about what your snare drum necessarily sounds like. You're not trying to mix your snare drum or do all this crazy routing unless that's part of your songwriting process. But typically you just want to focus on the step that you're in right now, and that will help you go to the next phase a lot easier if you give your full focus onto one step at a time, right? And I didn't know this for the longest time. I was just like half mixing, and then I'd be like programming my drums, but then I'd have a new guitar riff and then I'd change the tone and then I'd spend an hour trying to like change the tone. And it was just like such a chaotic mess of focus instead of having a process for my creativity. Be like, when I start writing a song, this is what I do first. I find my sounds. I find the vibe that I'm going for, right? And then I might find a motif or two. I might have a riff that I've written. And then from that riff, I will try to distinguish what is the vibe, right? What am I trying to say? What is coming out of me? And then how am I going to make that happen? And then once you record those things, like what is the arrangement that makes most sense to have maximum impact, right? So then once you have an arrangement, then you go to mixing, then you go to like, okay, can I do different routings to add impact? But I would really employ you to have some sort of workflow for your creativity. Just like if you're practicing an instrument, you want to practice your music production in the same way, right? You want to have some sort of structure to practice, right? Like a learning framework. So even if you're just getting started, let's say you're learning about EQ, right? Learn about the equalization for 1 week, just learn about it, watch tutorials, and then practice using that one tool, right? Practice it on different songs, on different parts, different instruments, and see how you vibe with it. And then once you've mastered that, then you can move on to compression, which would be like another step in the mixing phase. And it's just about having some sort of structure to follow so that you're learning concepts that build on each other instead of just like learning stuff that's super detached. Because if you go on YouTube and you look up tutorials, you'll learn about parallel processing, and then you'll learn about mastering, or you'll learn about this one mixing technique that applies only to if you have a certain kind of sound that you're working with in the first place. And then you go to songwriting, and then you go to all these different ideas, and they don't really connect to each other. And if you're not working on these different concepts as you learn them, they won't get integrated. You won't really learn anything. You might learn something theoretically, but you might not learn it in practice. So I would encourage you to have some sort of framework, a plan of action to learn certain things, and then check them off as you go. And that's what the framework, the PDF is for. It's just a framework for you to follow so that you don't get overwhelmed, right? So you can focus on one thing at a time, take it one step at a time. And simplicity is so beautiful. I have learned this myself, is that typically I overanalyze. I have a really active mind and I want to do all the things at once. I want to focus on the whole thing at once. But as I've matured over time and realized the power and simplicity, that when you really bring it back and focus on one or two things at a time and really just streamline your focus to one or two components, that your creativity goes way farther, way higher, because now you're not so charged up in your mind. You get to focus on one thing, and then your mind gets to be creative around the one thing that you're learning instead of being overwhelmed. So that's basically it. And with I have a closing line, is that creativity is more so a work ethic than it is a talent, because I truly believe that everyone is creative. Like anyone can be creative if they try, right? If like some people are like, oh, I'm not the creative type, or I'm not an artist. I feel everyone is an artist. Anyone can be creative if they have the chance. But what separates artists who create work and finish work and become, so to speak, like an accomplished artist, is that they have a work ethic with their creativity. And together, that's what becomes your kind of center as an artist, right? But if you have no work ethic, if you have no like the will to keep wanting to try and having a sort of framework to keep at it and keep at it, even if you might fail, even if you might feel not so great one day, to just keep trying, that if you have that framework, you will reach new heights that you could never imagine. And that's all you need, because as you do that, your creativity and everything will just come out of you. It's not like creativity is a skill you have to learn. It's more so a muscle you have to train. So anyway, we'll leave you with that. That's all I had. I hope that was helpful for you today. I hope that you can gain some insights from these kind of truths that I learned over time that I've struggled with. And now I feel like I've learned these things, and I hope that I can pass them on to you and that you could learn something. If you have any questions or any comments, or want any more content you want to see in the future, just leave me a comment below, and I'd be happy to reply or make another video like this to talk about a concept that you're interested in. And if you haven't already, go ahead and download that framework, that PDF I made for you guys. It's super simple. It's super useful to just have around your studio. So again, you can find it at metamindmusic.com/workflow, or you can find it in the description below. And until next time, I bid you farewell.